Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Kiernan.
Oh, you must be so happy. Today is a Ryan special.
Yeah, the listeners are just begging for more sort of Ryan-led content.
Absolutely. They love how wandering and ill-informed it is. I know, given your reputation on the show, they know it's either about immersive theater, Diego Rivera, or natural wines.
Yeah, or all three in an incredible experience that I've yet to ever.
If you could just immerse yourself in a vat of natural wine with Diego Rivera, I think that is your version of heaven.
In the Detroit Institute of Art, there's a picture of Diego Rivera that he drew of himself as an altar boy stealing the wine.
Oh, wow. So it's pretty close.
Oh, he'd have no problem just enjoying himself.
Let's get that up on the Instagram.
Absolutely.
At OOO podcast.
Yes.
Now, Ryan, today we're talking not just what is natural wines, but we are going to cover the 5 best Brooklyn natural wine spots. Now, Ryan, we're not just covering what are natural wines. We're also going to get to your recommendations and an interview.
Yeah, we're going to have the 5 hottest spots in Brooklyn natural wine.
What are we, BuzzFeed here? Come on, man.
If only. No, we're not laying anybody off.
They would definitely do 7.
Yeah.
7 best Brooklyn.
We're not laying anyone off, and we're not a union. So we're not we are not BuzzFeed. We're going to see 5 of the best spots to have natural wine here in Brooklyn. And we're going to talk to Henry Glucroft, who is the owner of Henry's, which is a fantastic natural wine shop, as well as Petra, which is one of the natural wine bars we're going to talk about today. So Henry's going to give us the who, what, where, why, what is natural wine.
Are you going to cover how? Just the W's? You're not going to go for the H?
Just the W's, yeah.
All right.
How is with a glass. People know that.
Sure, yeah. Ryan, we have a very important recalculating.
Did you make another mistake?
Recalculating.
Now, Ryan, as you remember, recalculating is the segment where we revisit a topic that we've covered on a previous episode, sometimes to correct mistakes, but sometimes just to incorporate listener feedback or tids and bits that we may have forgotten. So a listener, Joe, who has visited Bhutan, said that I made an oversight in not mentioning Thimphu's dog population. And he is absolutely right. This is a mainstay of the capital city of Bhutan. So what this refers to is that Thimphu has a major stray dog population, and I'm not talking like just a couple that restaurants kind of feed and Lady and the Tramp situation. This is like overrun with stray dogs,
like a feral, like in the same way Istanbul's got a cat situation.
Yeah, exactly. That is that I think that's a good comparison. But unlike cats, dogs like to approach human beings.
Right.
So one thing that really defines any visit to Bhutan is the fact that during the day, these stray dogs tend to just kind of lay in the sun, lounge around, and, they're perfectly fine. Sure, if you're a little skittish around dogs, they might approach. But where the problem is that in the evenings and throughout the entire night, they sort of roam the city in these packs, and they howl and bark like you can't conceive. So when you go to Bhutan, you absolutely want to pack a pair of earplugs, because if you don't, you're going to be woken up in the middle of the night believing that there are stray dogs that have broken into your hotel room who are directly in your ear howling.
Really?
Yes,
That's
is
exciting.
It's unbelievable. Once you hear it, it becomes kind of the sound of Bhutan to you, or at least to me it did. So the Bhutanese have actually tried to tackle this problem, and what they did was they partnered with the Humane Society International to put in a program that they call Catch, Neuter, Vaccinate, Release. And, they brought in experts from India who came in and trained Bhutanese vets on how to get the dogs and humanely neuter them or spay them and then put them right back where they were caught. And when they were catching them, they were using giant nets because, humane treatment of animals and respect for other forms of life is a primary sort of Buddhist belief. So in this Buddhist country, they weren't going to do any sort of major killing of the dogs.
So it's not like in Romania where famously they kind of cleaned up their dog problem in a not a nice way.
No. Apparently, Bhutan did try to put a bunch of the dogs in government-run pounds, and a lot of them did pass on that way. And then they discovered this program. And now they have a thriving neutering program, and something that the Catholic Church might consider. And and the way that you can tell is that if a stray dog has been neutered, and I don't know how humane this is, they put a little triangle clip into its ear. So you will often see stray dogs around Thimphu with this sort of wedge cut into their ear, and that's how you know that that's going to be the end of their family line.
That seems pretty humane. I'm sure that that it's like giving a dog a little earring to let people know that it doesn't have any rabies or anything like that.
All right, fine. Well, next time I see you, I will cut a giant wedge in your ear and see whether you actually think that that's humane.
To let people know that I'm not going to breed.
Fair enough. One can hope. All right, Ryan. Well, I hope that addresses the dog issue in Thimphu. So if you're scared of dogs, make sure you get indoors before evening in Thimphu and put in those earplugs or that ambient noise machine, because otherwise you're going to hear the howls of a lifetime.
You know what I thought this recalculating was going to be about?
What?
A couple weeks ago we answered a listener question about American cheese.
Yeah, that's right.
And within 48 hours of the episode release,
mm-hmm.
people all over the internet were throwing American cheese slices at their babies' faces.
Oh, I missed that meme.
Oh, yeah, it was out of control. And what did we unleash with our conversation around American cheese here? It is really, folks, if you have a baby, don't throw American cheese at its face.
So
That's what we're recommending.
If history repeats itself, there's a lot of babies that are about to be captured and neutered and released. So with that, Ryan, I think it's time to take off and get to your interview with natural wine connoisseur, Henry Glucroft.
Let's take off and go to Henry's.
Keep the natural wine out of the pilot's hand, please.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
And I am here with Henry, who owns three of my favorite wine spots here in Bushwick. He owns a wine shop called Henry's. And a wine bar called Petra, we'll talk about later on in the show, and then a cafe called Sunrise Sunset. So, Henry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So, we want to jump right in here and ask, what's the big deal about natural wine? What makes natural wine so special?
Well, in a way, I'm happy it's a big deal, but it shouldn't be a big deal at all. I think part of it is the media started to make it into something when really, natural wine was the first wine ever made. It's just that as kind of mass consumer culture took over and it hit the wine market like a lot of other food and beverage parts of the industry, and people started to overly manipulate wine for consumer reasons. Since then, and even through that period, there's always been winemakers that have stuck to certain types of winemaking, which really involve an organic or biodynamic or other similar type of agriculture.
Okay, so as we look at that, then what is the big difference from an agricultural perspective and a winemaking perspective between natural wine and maybe some California Pinot I'm going to buy at Whole Foods?
Well, that California Pinot, if, ingredients were on the label the same way they are for food, would say a lot more than fermented grape juice. And then if there were information about the farming, it could say that pesticides and other chemicals were used in that farming process. But not necessarily. Fortunately, there are Cali Pinots now that are made organically and with, nothing or very little added or subtracted while making the wine.
And what would be added? Like, what kind of ingredients would a winemaker add to their wine that wouldn't be in a natural bottle of wine?
I mean, I'm not so well versed in everything that can be done, but the most common thing will be sulfur, which acts as a preservative. And sometimes I'm, not entirely opposed to its use in winemaking, but commercial wines have levels of sulfur that, you know, are borderline poisonous at times. Um, and, I think a good wine, there's naturally occurring sulfites in wine. So you can't really say there's never any sulfur in wine. Um, but yeah, then from there's things called mega purple and colorants and things that'll add sweetener. And there's people that'll stick in oak chips rather than age in a barrel because it's cheaper and imprints flavor. And so there's lots of things in winemaking that, an integrity that the consumer doesn't necessarily see.
Gotcha. And I've heard about the wood chips actually, because it sort of simulates the idea of aging in an oak barrel without having to actually do that.
Yeah, and in all fairness, that's a bit of maybe a cheap shot for me because I do believe in the financial realities that people face, and I wouldn't do it, and I don't think it's worth doing. Also, from just a palate perspective, that sometimes I feel like oak can hide. At times it definitely makes a wine delicious in many ways, but sometimes can hide the true wine.
So what kind of flavors do you think are more common in natural wine than regular consumer wine?
I guess it's hard to say flavor. I think there's a stereotype for a more traditional wine that tends to be bolder, have tannins that are present but not too aggressive necessarily. Again, depending on variety of what people are buying and how advanced the drinker they are. But the oaked Cabernet from California is a representative stereotype of this sort of trend. But then on the natural end of the spectrum, people are enjoy using the term funky and having challenging flavors and anything from a slight fizz in a still red wine or lower ABVs alcohol in the bottle tends to be a thing too. Let's see. I mean, really weird flavors are often sought out. But
I know when I go and I sit down at your place, Petra, I almost always ask, "What's the funkiest by the glass red wine do you have right now?" So that's something that I look for. You do these fantastic last Tuesday of every month tastings, and I learned a great term, grandmother's closet there. So just so many fun ways that I think that people can describe natural wines.
yeah, definitely. And there's also tons of natural wines that you could give to your grandmother or parents who love more traditional wines, and they would be very pleased. Um, so tastes can overlap, and like you say, there's all these weird ways of describing wines, and that kind of comes with this trying to also there's a rebellious element at times where people, because a lot of natural wines can be grown in prestigious appellations and sometimes not get the appellation because they're so different, or sometimes they're barely different and just can't get the appellation for labeling or for some reason. So there is this like Vin de France VDF has become a bigger, more respected thing, and it kind of has this rebel against an establishment attribute to it.
That's one of the kind of natural wine culture things that I enjoy on the internet is how natural wine folks tend to go after these bigger, these sort of norms and say this is silly or it's too overplayed, and I think that's something fun about the natural wine sort of online scene. And another thing that you see on a lot more menus that I hadn't seen even a decade ago would be orange wine. What is orange wine and how does that happen?
It's basically, it throws people off because of the term orange and the fact that orange is a fruit and color. But it's a white wine that's made kind of like a red wine, where the wine will spend time on the skins. And depending on the color of the grape, harvest dates, thickness of the skin, the color of the wine will tend to be darker. And it'll have more tannin, which is kind of this grippy texture that's inside the grape skin.
Now, have you had a chance to visit in person some of these smaller providers that you work with in France or Spain? Where have you traveled from a wine perspective?
I've gone to, I've visited, I haven't, given the amount of winemakers I work with, I've visited so few, but I'll do a couple wine trips in France or more recently in Spain, and just visited Partida Creus and Clos Lentiscus and the Penedès just south of Barcelona. And it's really nice to both see their vine, where they live. First of all, this is also, all the winemakers basically live in the vineyard. So it's nice to see their home, their lifestyle, the vines, the environment, imagine kind of their daily life. Obviously, depending on what time of year you visit them, their life is completely different because it just follows, the vine. So, during harvest, you can imagine they're busy, and early in the season, pruning. So it's definitely a busy, hardworking life, and you see all the infrastructure, and a lot of times there's a mad scientist element, but also someone who's very in touch with nature and just loves nature. And good food and wine, because whenever you visit them, eating and drinking is such a big part of the lifestyle.
I'm so jealous of that trip. When you were in Mexico, did you visit any of your providers down there?
I actually didn't. It was kind of but I spent a little time in Oaxaca and kind of, visited more of the restaurants and bars and not the producers themselves, sure, because it was hard in such a short trip, but a lot of the people dealing with interesting mezcal. In Mexico, no wine, there's obviously Beachy.
Friend of the show, Beachy.
But they're far from Oaxaca, and I didn't make it out to see them on this trip.
Are there any good raw wine conferences or tastings that you can recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, well, in New York, for there's definitely the raw wine fairs that happen in London, New York, Montreal, and LA, and Berlin, I believe. So they're pretty covered. In terms of New York consumer events, there aren't a ton of other great ones. There was this recent La Poulet, high-end Burgundy event, but there's room for more large natural wine events in New York. In Europe, there's obviously a bunch. A lot of these events have a slight industry focus, which is why raw wine's kind of nice, because it does have a big consumer focus. But if you have industry friends, there's definitely a lot of industry events out there, which can, not necessarily wide open to the general public, but possibly accessible.
To close up, if our listeners are going to try their first glass of natural wine, what should they expect?
They shouldn't try and expect one thing because just based on where you go for this natural wine and who serves it to you and other contexts, the range of how it could taste is so different. So I would just say try and keep an open mind and try and envision, imagine where this wine came from and imagine a hardworking person who's put a lot of love and, hopefully harvested the grapes by hand himself or herself and, made the wine with a lot of love and enjoy.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Henry. And we're going to go back to the studio. All right, Kieran, now do you know more about natural wine? Do you have a little, when I say natural wine, you know what I'm talking about now?
Yeah, it's got no artificial anything, and it's a little cloudier than a typical wine. And, I should use words like oaky and,
you can use, it would be barnyardy. I've heard it described like my grandmother's closet. These are the kind of things you're looking for in natural wine.
Yeah, but your grandmother was a drunk, so
just smelled like cabbage in it, ham and cabbage in there.
Oh, poor grandma. What'd you call your grandma?
Mom and Mom and Poppy.
Mom.
Yeah.
Huh, I've never heard that.
Yeah, Mama. I have no idea where it came from, but Mom.
I had both of my grandmothers wanted to be called Nana. So one was Nana, and then one who was like maybe a foot taller than the other said, "I'll just be Big Nana." So we had Nana and Big Nana. All right, we're gonna cut all that. So now, Ryan, if I'm looking for some natural wines that are oaky, sort of grandmother's closety, where should I be looking for those things?
In Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn really is on the forefront of natural wine on the East Coast. We have so many fantastic spots here, and I want to highlight five places that you can find me, on any given night.
Why are these limited to Brooklyn? Why not Manhattan? Why aren't we giving some of the Manhattanites some love here?
Look, Manhattan has natural wine, but it's sort of like the Walmart of natural wines out there. It's not, it's natural, in quotation marks. Although there are a couple good places, not my scene. I want to talk about some of the OG natural wine places here in Brooklyn.
What's OG?
The original gangster.
Oh, God. I don't know that.
Boston folks, So the first place I want to talk about, because we just had Henry on, is his wine bar, Petra, which is located in Bushwick, and was probably one of the first natural wine bars that I ever went to. It's a very low-key place. It's got some fantastic sort of Mediterranean bites and a lot of great by-the-glass examples of some of the wine that he was talking about today.
Do you know if they offer flights?
He does not do flights. But they do have at the last Tuesday of every month a brown bag tasting, and this is where
where they serve wines that taste like brown bags?
That's extra, actually. It's when they basically have a bunch of different wines they put in brown bags and they pour for you and they make you guess region, type of grape.
Oh God! Oh my God! That would be impossible.
It's very humbling because I get none of them right.
Yeah.
I can pretty much guess the color of the wine,
sure.
Almost 100%.
Yeah.
Although with some of those skin contact and orange wines, it gets complicated. But after that, I'm sort of useless. But you do learn a lot about just sort of how varied the natural wine world is, and that's on the last Tuesday of every month at Petra is a great way to kind of try a bunch of wines for for $40. It's a good deal.
All right, Petra, number one. Number two.
Now this is probably the most famous of all the natural wine shops in New York City. If you ask somebody who knows about natural wine, where do I go? They're going to say the Four Horsemen. The Four Horsemen is a reference to the apocalypse, which, Brooklyn, we love irony. So we're very ironically into the apocalypse.
Sure.
And it's owned by one of the members of LCD Sound System.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's super hip. It's got some very cool kind of like woofy art around the place. A little pricey by the glass. Not going to lie to you, but they have a great selection, and the folks who are working there have incredibly knowledgeable about the wine that they're pouring you. So definitely, if you're going to go in, get reservations because it's a small place, and make sure you ask and talk about the wine because you can learn a lot from them. And that's in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn.
They also have one of the great logos of any drinkery. It's a horse with 4 kind of ghosts popping off the top. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very cool place.
It's funny because when I've pictured the 4 horsemen, I haven't ever thought of them as all being on a single horse, though that is how it's represented here.
Well, that's because they've all been drinking, so it's just much easier than having
just hop on. Yeah, only one has to stay sober enough to drive the horse. Now, given that it is a reference to the Bible, would you say that the wine here is a revelation?
I think it's the kind of wine that if it was served at the Last Supper, you'd be totally happy with. Sorry, Pope John Paul, if you're listening.
Wait, why John Paul? That's 2 popes ago, right?
He's the only sensitive one, I feel like.
I mean, Benedict's still alive.
That's true. What a weird world. So right around the corner from the 4 Horsemen, within a 3-minute walk, is another one of my favorite wine spots. It's called Meyer, and it's they've got I think 80 glasses of wine available by the glass, which is really an incredible.
What happens when the 81st person comes in? Do they just not get any wine?
Well, I meant different kinds of wine.
Oh, all right, okay. And by the way, Meyer is HAVE, like I have wine, right?
Yes.
And Meyer.
Yeah, and it's on Meyer Street, which is one word. It's very It's very clever. Right?
Oh, that is clever.
Yeah, so this is a fantastic place. Great pasta. I really actually love the food there. And they've got a ton of orange wine. And orange wine is something that, has been around for a very, very, very long time. In fact, I was just talking to Sam at another place, and he was telling me over 2,000 years orange wine has been around. But I had not had it until 2 years ago. So definitely a cool place. It's small. It's very romantic, and I think if you kind of go to the 4 Horsemen, have a drink there, and then kind of walk around the corner and grab a bite and some wine at Meyer, that is a great evening that I've done many times.
Now, Ryan, why is orange wine orange?
It's because of the amount of skin contact that it has. Whether or not that they take.
You're a man who loves skin contact.
I've never turned down skin contact. So that is why some wine is orange. Is that it actually it ferments with the actual
with the skins and seed actually in it. But it's like a variant of white wine, basically.
Yeah, it's a more intense version of white wine. In fact, I've gotten so and this is I'm not into too much subtlety. You might
yeah, just clear enough.
Subtlety's not my thing. So I'm not a huge fan of white wine. That's why I really do enjoy these orange wines, these pet nats, which are sort of like funky, sparkly whites.
Lord.
There's a lot going on in the wine world.
My favorite thing about Meyer is on their website, they say, our Italian wines come from conscious wine growers. It's like, well, I hope they're conscious.
Socially it's a big part of the
yeah, but it doesn't say socially conscious, nor does it say conscientious. It's just that they're conscious. Just like, I guess. Otherwise the skin would be in there way too long. All right, so number 3, Meyer. What's number 4?
Number 4 is actually a pretty new place. I think it's the newest place on this list, and it's called Ops Pizza, and it's in Bushwick, Brooklyn, where I live. And it was actually just nominated for a James Beard Award.
What I like about your recommendations that they're always within 10 feet of your apartment.
It's only because I live in such a cool neighborhood. You would never understand. But I live in a place that's desirable people come, so it's like.
Yeah, if you want to ride the subway 2 hours out of Times Square, you may almost get to Bushwick. That's where everything's happening.
And if you're in Times Square, maybe you shouldn't come to Bushwick. There's an Olive Garden right there. They're going to have some great wine for you. They're going to pour it, no problem. But if you do take the L and you come all the way out here to Bushwick and you go to Ops Pizza, you've got this James Beard nominated wine list. Right out of the gate, which is really exciting for them. And they have a ton of stuff available at the glass. I think of all the places we're talking about today, it's like the most reasonable by the glass. And the pizza is fantastic. And they have an off-menu calzone that, I could go on and on about. And that, one of the reasons why I'm not hitting my weight goals is that off-menu Ops Pizza Calzone. So, highly recommended. Something to note about Ops. It's one of those restaurants that there is no tipping.
Huh.
It's
baked right in.
It's all baked right in. Yeah. So that's
that's good, because if you have enough natural wine, doing that math is tough.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so just remember that when you're looking at the per glass, you're like, you don't got a tip on that. So that's a nice thing.
Yeah, it'll save you $1.
Yeah. Oh, you're tipping $1 on a $14 glass of wine. Ladies and gentlemen, Kieran in a nutshell.
God. All right, so number 4, Ops, OPS, not OPPS, which was my original reading of it.
Yeah, OPS, Ops Pizza, highly recommended.
And number 5?
Okay, so this is the last of my Brooklyn wine recommendations, and this is not in Williamsburg or Bushwick. This is in sort of more southern Brooklyn, so you're going to see a lot of dads pushing baby carriages around.
Absolutely, Confederate statues. It is far south Brooklyn.
It's not that south.
Okay.
It's in Prospect Heights, and it is called Otway. And it is an American bistro that has an exclusive natural wine list. And the woman who runs it, Samantha, is super committed to having a lot of really interesting stuff available by the glass. And I believe it's the only one of these places that has happy hour specials, which is something I think that is sorely needed when you're looking at some of these wine prices. And really good food. They have a great brunch. There at Otway, and I think if you're not willing to kind of come north to hipster Bushwick and Williamsburg, and you want to kind of hang out with the more elder Brooklyn folks in their 30s, definitely Otway, terrific place, and highly recommended for their brunch. And I've stayed there quite a few hours enjoying some wine.
So Ryan, if you have inspired folks with your interview and the education today on natural wines, if people are ready to be as pretentious as you, one last time, walk us through the best 5 Brooklyn natural wine spots.
All right. Number 1 is Petra in Bushwick. Number 2 is the 4 Horsemen in Williamsburg. Number 3, Meyer in Williamsburg. Number 4 is Ops Pizza in Bushwick. And number 5 is Otway in Prospect Heights. And those are my, I'm at one of those places at least once a week. Sorry, Mom.
You should post to Instagram which one so people know which one to go to.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think with that, we can pop a cork and go to the last stop.
Yeah, it's definitely time to put a cork in it.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, this is our favorite segment of every week, the last stop. When you and I each talk about one thing that we've read or we've eaten or that we've traveled ourselves, something that keeps the spirit of wanderlust alive within us each week. So, Ryan, I have to ask you, what's your last stop?
My last stop is a fantastic new production of Oklahoma that is opening on Broadway. The previews begin on March 19th, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's a scaled down sort of modern. I wouldn't say modern retelling, but sort of modern tonally. Very sort of alt country.
I forgot about your fourth favorite thing, alt country.
But it is. It's a very sort of alt country score. Everybody, all the musicians are on stage. It's a small cast. Curly is the star of Oklahoma. Is typically played by sort of like a kind of a strong,
manly man,
manly American.
Yeah,
male.
Sort of like a Kiernan sort of figure.
Yeah, like a Kiernan sort of figure, right? Like Hugh Jackman has played.
Yeah. I mean, people knew what I meant by a Kiernan sort of figure.
People always confuse you with Hugh Jackman. I don't
absolutely.
know.
I'm a triple threat.
Yeah, but in this version, Curly's like a skinny little hipster cowboy. So
it's a Brooklyn version of Oklahoma.
It originally played at St. Anne's Warehouse, which is the capital of hipster theater here in Brooklyn.
Yes, I remember reading the review of this. Now, have you seen this?
I did. I had the good fortune to see it actually at St. Anne's during its limited run, and I could not believe how fresh and new it was. I've seen Oklahoma so many times in my life, the movie, the show, different versions, and it's always sort of the same, and everything about this is sort of turned on its head. it is ambitious and it is dark and the music sounds awesome. And I am so excited to return to Broadway and to see this production on the big stage.
And what number would you say is your favorite number in it?
Anything that Curly sings. I mean, like Surly with a fringe on top.
Oh, I love the fringe on top.
And it's so, and he actually, in this version, he grabs a guitar and he plays the guitar while he's singing it to her. And it is so charming. I was just like, he had to buckle me down in the seat to keep him getting up and dancing.
Now, do they do the accents that I typically associate with the show?
They do, yeah. They definitely. I mean, it's set in Oklahoma, and it is the idea is the director said, like, what if you had no idea what Oklahoma was, and someone just handed you this script for the first time, and so it is kind of stripped down, but it's definitely still kind of true to the original vision of the show. It just feels very lively and energetic and new.
I think the main test is whether in the song "Surrey on Fringe on Top." Does he say, the wheels are yellow, the upholstery is brown, the dashboard's genuine leather?
He absolutely says genuine leather.
All right. Well, then in that case, it is an authentic but fresh take on Oklahoma.
Totally. And a shout out to the director, Daniel Fish. And that's a name you're going to be hearing about come Tony time. That is my bet. And yeah.
Oh, you're sneaking in your hot Tony picks into our travel podcast? I didn't realize we got to discuss things like that beforehand.
And what is your last stop? Is it another musical? Are you going to do a little In the Heights for us?
No, I'm not, because sneak preview next week we're going to be talking about musicals. No, this week my last stop is this quite incredible New York Times article that I read that is about how there is now only one Blockbuster store still in existence. It's in Bend, Oregon. And apparently there were two. And for
one was in Alaska, right? Am I crazy?
Of the last two, one was in Australia. That is closing, and that leaves Oregon. And for our younger millennial listeners, we should probably define Blockbuster is a store where you can go in and you can rent VHSs and DVDs, and you bring them home for a limited period of time, and then you put them into your VCR or your DVD player, and then you watch them.
And then you return them. You get in your car,
right?
Or the subway. But I guess they don't have one of the subway.
I don't think Bend, Oregon, is known for its subway.
New York is barely known for its subway these days.
True.
So you get in your car and you drive 25 minutes to return. To return the Mask 2 or Dumber and Dummy, whatever you're getting from the Blockbuster.
I think it was Dumber and Dumb. I think it was
several.
Dumb and Dumber, not Dumber and Dummy.
Now, you might not know this about me, Kiernan, but in high school, I had the incredible privilege to follow in my idol, Quentin Tarantino's footsteps, and to work at a Hollywood Video, which was the Disney competitor.
Absolutely. Blockbuster has outlived that.
Yeah, and Hollywood Video, they were highly moral. So they didn't have that little back room that Blockbuster did that had a few other extra, selections for gentlemen.
What was back there? Like
some gentlemen like a certain kind of videos, and they would be back behind.
Oh, you mean like sexy musicals like Chicago?
Yeah, with exactly like Falsey style kind of
yeah.
dances.
Oh, wow.
A lot of skin contact.
Oh, I'm starting to sweat. Stop. I remember when I was growing up, so we didn't often go to Blockbuster. Typically, my parents would go grocery shopping on Friday nights. And if I was with them, I would get to rent a video game or a VHS at the small video rental at the front of the store. And that there goes your weekend.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, it's nothing like getting that VHS tape home. And, what were you watching back then? Like Home Alone 2?
I was just about to say Home Alone. And I remember getting the Home Alone video games. And I remember once there was a blizzard and I got to keep the game for a whole extra day. And it was just aces. What's fascinating about the Bend, first of all, it seems very fitting that the last Blockbuster should be in Oregon. I mean, that just is like, the most hipstery thing. And apparently, they have 4,000 continued members of Blockbuster in this community. And each week they are still opening several new accounts, which is Incredible.
Is there a lack of internet connectivity in this? Like, I don't understand what in the world you would go to a Blockbuster for at this point.
I mean, so in this store, they do sell sort of Blockbuster paraphernalia. So if you want a hat I think it is the kitsch value of visiting. I remember a few weeks ago, you spoke about the rival Burger King that is an independent Burger King, not part of the massive franchise.
Is this an independent Blockbuster?
This is no, it is part of the Blockbuster franchise, and
so Blockbuster corporate still exists just to oversee this.
So Blockbuster corporate was bought by Dish Network, and and so this one Blockbuster, yes, it is still licensed by Dish Network, and they're letting it live.
It would not surprise me living in Bushwick and seeing the amount of vinyl stores that exist.
Exactly.
If someone didn't open an ironic video store that was just packed 24/7, like I could see that happening.
This is what I'm saying. So Blockbuster is still, I wouldn't say going strong, but it's still around. So if you find yourself in Bend, Oregon, definitely take a visit and pick up a cool retro hat. I have to think this thing isn't going to be around for many more years.
Yeah, get out to Oregon ASAP to check. Although if they're opening up new accounts, it's a big test of how long can this thing go. Apparently, there are several years left on its lease. That's what the article says. I really miss one of the things I loved about working at Hollywood Video was that I got to take the posters when they were done.
Oh yeah, cool.
So I had hundreds of movie posters, and my room was like you walked in, it was just Pulp Fiction posters essentially all around the room. And I don't know whatever happened to all those posters, but when I was a kid, it was vital for me to get as many movie posters as I could.
Oh man, you should put in your application to Bend, Oregon.
It sounds like a fun place to spend time.
And, if you do make the trip, just remember, be kind.
Rewind.
Exactly. All right, Ryan. Well, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're giving our regards to Broadway.
Absolutely. We're going to make recommendations on how you can score great tickets to Broadway and off-Broadway shows. You can be sure we're going to be singing up a storm. Ryan and I, both big Broadway fans.
There might be some kind of like magical stuff that we can make happen on this episode, Kieran, because I don't know if folks are aware, but I have a little bit of a theatrical background. So,
brother, hey, listen, if we get out of the episode and I haven't sung half the score of Music Man, we're gonna call it a miracle.
Yeah, we're gonna violate a lot of copyright.
Well, you know what's gonna happen if we violate it? We're gonna be in trouble, my friends.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
I was going to try to sing that. I don't have it in me.